Okay, we're going to be studying properties of numbers. The expressions 4k plus 8k and 12k are called equivalent expressions because they represent the same number. Just like 4 plus 6 is the same as 10. They're equivalent expressions. Alright, now the reflexive property. A lot of this is going to be vocabulary, things that you got to learn just to be able to converse in algebra later on in the course, okay? And to use these properties to be able to solve problems that require you to think them through, okay? So very important that you learn these vocabulary terms. The reflexive property is any quantity is equal to itself. For example, A is equal to A, 5 is equal to 5, 4 plus 7 is equal to 4 plus 7. Something that might help you to remember the reflexive property is that when you look at your reflection in the mirror, you're seeing yourself. It's the same thing, okay? Symmetric property. If one quantity equals a second quantity, then the second quantity equals the first. If A equals B, then B is equal to A. If 8 equals 2 plus 6, then 2 plus 6 is equal to 8. Makes sense, doesn't it? The transitive property. If one quantity equals a second quantity, and the second quantity equals a third quantity, then that first one is going to equal to the third one. Let's look at an example. If A equals B, and then B equals C, then that follows that A is equal to C. Now with numbers, if 6 plus 9 is equal to 3 plus 12, and 3 plus 12 is 15, that means 6 plus 9 must be 15. That's called the transitive property. If one thing is equal to a second thing, then the first thing is, and the second thing is equal to a third thing, then the first thing is equal to that third thing. Oh man, you got to think about that one, don't you? Substitution property. A quantity may be substituted for its equal in any expression. Therefore, if A equals B, then A can be replaced by B in any expression. For example, we've got 4n, and we tell you that n is equal to 11. Then you can write 4 times 11 instead of 4 times n. If I tell you that you've got an expression 6t, and I tell you that t is equal to 3, then that means that 6 times 3 is what you can write. You can substitute what I told you t was in place of t. Okay, we've got two identity properties, one for addition and one for multiplication. The sum of any number in 0 is equal to that number. So you've got 6 plus 0 is equal to 6. A plus 0 is equal to A. And then over here on the multiplying side, 6 times 1 is equal to 6. A times 1 is equal to A. So the identity property is when you end up with the same thing that you started with. And for addition, that's when you add 0. For multiplication, it's when you multiply by 1. Then we've got the multiplicative property of 0. The product of any number and 0 is equal to 0. It doesn't matter what the number is. 0 times any number is equal to 0. Okay, the additive inverse property. A number and its opposite equals 0. So we've got A plus negative A, 0. 6 plus negative 6, 0. 4 and negative 4, 0. Opposites make 0. Okay, so two numbers whose product is 1 are called reciprocals or multiplicative inverses. For example, when we work these out, let me get a different color. When we work these out, you can see that B goes into B one time, and B goes into B one time. A goes into A one time, and A goes into A one time. We have 1 times 1 and 1 times 1, and the answer is 1. So when you can multiply two numbers together and get 1, they are called multiplicative inverses. All that means is you turn them over. So the multiplicative inverse of 6/7 is 7/6. The multiplicative inverse of x is 1 over x. The multiplicative inverse of x over y is equal to y over x. Okay? The commutative property of addition and multiplication, it only applies with addition and multiplication, does not apply with subtraction and division. But the commutative property of addition and multiplication says it doesn't matter what order you add numbers or in what order you multiply numbers. You can add 6 plus 3, or you can add 3 plus 6. You still are going to get 9. You can multiply 6 times 3, or you can multiply 3 times 6. It doesn't matter. You're still going to get 18. So it doesn't matter what order you add or multiply numbers. The associative property is just an extension of that. It just means that whenever you've got multiple numbers, more than 2, it doesn't matter how you group the numbers when you're adding or multiplying. So you can add 6 plus 4 plus 2, which would be 6 plus 6 is 12. Or you can add 6 plus 4 and get 10 plus 2, which gives you 12. For that matter, you could add 6 plus 2 and get 8 plus 4 and still get 12. So it doesn't matter what order you do it in, you're going to get 12. Same thing applies for multiplication. 6 times 4 times 2. That will be 6 times 8, which gives you 48. Or you can go 6 times 4, which is 24, times 2, and gives you 48. Doesn't matter what order you do it in, you're going to get the same answer. So let's evaluate 7 times 4 minus 3 minus 1 plus 5 times 1/5, and we'll name the property that we use in each. So the first one, what changed in the first one? We went from 4 minus 3 to 1. Now you might not remember, but that's called the subtraction property. That's when we subtract numbers. The second one, what changed? Let's see. 7 times 1 became 7. Remember when you multiply a number by 1 and you get that same number? That's called the multiplicative identity property. The next thing we did, what changed? 5 times 1/5. You might not recognize this right away, but that's 5 over 1. And 5 over 1 times 1/5 is equal to 1. So that would be called the multiplicative inverse or reciprocal property, okay? Now the next thing we've got is -1 and 1 became 0. Well, what property was that? It's when two numbers are opposites equal 0. So that would be the additive inverse. When you add the opposite number and you get 0. And then finally, 7 minus 0. Well, two things you could have done here. 7 minus 0 can be the additive identity, because when you add 0 to anything, you're going to get 7. I mean, the same number. Or add or subtract 0. And the other thing that you can do is you can say you substituted. You substituted 7 for 7 minus 0. And for that matter, one more thing, you could have just done the subtraction property, but I chose substitution. Alright, your turn. The first one is you don't have to write anything, because that it's just nothing. That's the initial problem. But for these next 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, tell me what you did and how you describe the property that you used in order to solve the exercise. Pause the video and then get back with me. Alright, so on the first one, we've got 2 times 3 is the same. The difference is that we did 4 times 2 and made it 8. So what property would that be? Right, that's the multiplication property. Alright, then the next one, we went 8 minus 8 and we got 0. That would be the additive inverse property, where we add opposite numbers and we get 0. Then we've got 6 plus 0. We change the 2 times 3 to 6. So that would be the multiplication property. And then finally we went 6 plus 0 and got excuse me. We went 6 plus 0 and we got 6. Anytime you add 0 to a number and you get that same number, that is called the additive identity property.